Tuesday morning. We bring you a lot of information as Britain's first black current affairs radio show. Um, Over the last week, what's been taken. If you're a first time listener, welcome to Doctor's Surgery. It's a relatively new show that we're piloting. Um, so much things to iron out and get right. The show should be from 8 until 11, but tardiness is a crime. I know. If you want to take part in the show, the number is 0753-996-8143. I'll come back to the number a little bit later. What have we been discussing? Well, over the past few weeks, as you know, we review what's taken place in the media, the national media and the international media over the past week. And we have a chat and discuss how those things impact on us as a people, and what the next thing that what the next step we should really be looking towards and taking. So it's an open discussion. As you know, the Black Lives Matter protests are ongoing, and that's one of many things that I wanted to discuss today. Black Lives Matter. As you know, that's profoundly a topic area that's in full effect and full view and earshot of all the media outlets at the moment. Um, Additionally, we can look at the media onslaught that's taking place in the United States against the political system that will be running on from the Black Lives Matter discussion, and it will all tie up. You'll see. Um, what other aspects of things that we'd like to discuss? We'd like to discuss, um, last but not least, the impact, the impact of the and I guess it's a topic that we were talking about last week, the impact of the NHS and the planned approach towards helping Black folks in terms of what's taking place at the moment. Last week we really went into the core of this subject and this discussion, but and it was something that I said that I wouldn't go on into in any great depth, but I still feel that there's aspects of things that needs to be highlighted in this ongoing um, drama of this pandemic, or some people say pandemic and all these words, um, of COVID-19. And there's so much so happening. Um, Before I jump in, I've seen a video that I've not been able to authenticate as yet, where a lot of police officers have been quitting their jobs because the rules and regulations are changing. The headline on the video stated, or the title of the video, I should say, stated that police are quitting in large numbers because they are not allowed to choke out Black folks anymore. So that's something that we have to look into to get a better insight. Once I have that greater insight, I would love to bring it back to the forum for that greater discussion. Um, so, where are we today? If you're listening, before I jump into any great detail onto the show, we always like to test the airwaves to make sure that you're listening. Give us a call. Let us know that you're tuned in and you're hearing us loud and clear. A text message to let me know that you're listening. It's great incentive to push on with the show. The number is 0753-996-8143. I'll give it again, 0753-996-8143. One last time for the record, 0753-996-8143. That's the phone and text line. It's omegafmradio.co.uk if you want to listen online, or the Doctor's Surgery on YouTube. Just just search the Doctor's Surgery and then filter using channels, and we are right at the top. Okay, so you search normally on YouTube the Doctor's Surgery, and then you click filter and go to channels, and we're right there at the top, the Doctor's Surgery. Love to know that you can tune in and watch live the live video broadcast there on YouTube. And then we also on Omega 104.1 on Facebook, Omega FM.co, Omega FM Radio.co.uk. That's on the FM. Sorry, that's on the internet. Um, Mixcloud.com/, Omega DJ. And that's on the Mixcloud, as you know. And Omega London TV Presents is also another YouTube channel. Perhaps the link is on the website. You can go there and get that direct link as well. Um, so that's the general crux of it. Like I said, we'd love to hear from you guys if you are listening. But I'll start the show and announce it, and then I'll recap, and then I'll ask to see if anyone's listening, if anyone's out there. So the Black Lives Matter movement, as you know, a few years ago when the Black Lives Matter first started, it was seen and deemed a detraction or distraction away from the original. We touched on it last week, didn't we? Away from the original, away from the original focal group of what we do in terms of, well, back in the day in the 90s, we had the Nation of Islam, we had the United Noapian Nation, you had um, the Hebrew Israelites, and even before that, you had the Black Panther movement in the, we go back into the 70s or the early 80s. There's so many organizations that's come about that were set up for us, by us. And in a sense, in a greater nutshell, the Black Lives Matter movement was not so much set up by us, but yet it's achieving great feats. Now, there's, like I said, a pro and a con in and around the Black Lives Matter movement. The pro with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's that it's achieving quite good positive awareness globally. Not so much so as a movement per se, but because it is the movement that's representing the people at the moment, the youngsters at the moment. So the movement itself didn't garner this attention. The attention was needed, and the movement is the voice currently. One of the things that I've said in many of the shows previously is that there isn't a united or a leadership voice on the matter, which makes it difficult to actually give a, that clear and concise message. You know, there's a lot of hoopla, a lot of confusion in and around what the message of Black Lives Matter is saying. Whilst it's very clear what it's saying, but you know how the Western media are, they like to pretend like they do not understand and they don't grasp what's actually truly being said. And then on the negative side, you have the democratization of the Black Lives Matter movement. And when I say the democratization of the Black Lives Matter movement, for those who don't know, the Black Lives Matter movement, when you go to the United States, we know that it's a global movement where people are linking in, setting up different branches or different associations or different groups under that banner Black Lives Matter. In the United States, the website, the main body, the main website that receives funding, I apologize for the noise in the background, that receives funding from all these organizations, you know, that money, what happens to that money? Now, that money goes towards, as they say on the website, the democratization for the purpose of ending white supremacy. A very, a very beautiful. Hmm? I don't think it's that. A very beautiful. Apologies for the pause. A very beautiful phrase in that you're ending white supremacy and all these things, right? But in my mind, there's no such thing as white supremacy. There's racism and extreme racism, and that's all it is. You know, but nonetheless, a very beautiful phrase based on his philosophy, attempting to end the 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 perverse nature of our societies is set up based on institutionalized racism, as they say in the UK. And when we look at this institutionalized racism across the globe, we see that institutions are established and set up because we have to use the right terms. We shouldn't be using the terms that don't explain what's going on. Because if you're using a term that don't explain what's going on, it retards the mind to the mind's eye from seeing what the true problem is. So when we see institutionalized racism and societal racism, there's two different things. Societal racism is when you're walking on the street and you have someone with their prejudicial views that will throw abuse and hurl abuse at you within society. And they may not have any impact on your finances. They may have an impact on your safety and your well-being, being that they might attack you. But they don't have an impact on your finances per se, because you're not in their employment, or you're not seeking employment or business or so forth from them. So that would be similar to or akin to the march in London, where you had those white far right groups that jointly went to London a couple of weeks back with their viewpoint of societal prejudices and racism. You know, some people would say they're a white supremacist group, but they're not. They're not more supreme than me. Now, when we look at it in that sense, in the institutionalized sense, where racism within the institutions, they create disproportionality in terms of the representation in organizations that have a detrimental impact on the outcome of people based on their career paths or job success. Now, a colleague of mine would say, well, you cannot expect a white person to choose a black person over his own. That would be a betrayal and being a traitor. However, these institutions are designed or set up to say they choose the best candidate for the job, but that's not always the case. The black candidate would tend to have to be 10 times as good to get through the doors as opposed to their white counterparts. And that's the issue. And when we see it in the employment field, we can understand it. When we see it in the job market, we understand it, same thing. When we see it in the health sector, then it becomes worrisome, because as you can see, in the health sector, the disproportionality from this is significant, where over 20,000 black people have died during this COVID-19 pandemic in the United Kingdom, a greater proportion than the whole continent of Africa. Now, when I see on the news with the what do they call the medical, the chief medical or the deputy chief medical advisor to the government, that lady that was on the news yesterday with the COVID-19 update, making a statement like that we're looking at these figures, but then I just caught the slight remark about it not impacting on Africa yet. It's like, is it a plan then to go to Africa to poison all these people? Because there's no way that this proportionality of 4-1 took place, because it's simply for the fact that black people are unhealthy. Because when we see these things, you get thrown a lot of statistics and a lot of information that's quite misleading. And what happens is, for us to unpick what truly took place, it takes 10, 20, 30 years before the truth comes out. And then by that time, when the truth does come out, they've pacified that population to that information. So the information becomes secondary. And for those of you ever heard the campaign that was taking place on Omega a few over the past few years about seven dead and nothing said about the fire that took place in Lewisham in the 1980s, I think it was. You're not you wouldn't be as impassioned about it as you are about the Grenfell fire. You see what I mean? So one has become, what's the word I'm looking for? One has become something that you become, sorry, my mind's just a blank for the right word at the moment. You become a bit numb towards that. It makes no, it doesn't impact on you as, it's not as evocative in its nature as to what the one that's more current. And at the moment, this current information is being held as to the true reasoning to why so many black folks died in the United Kingdom, in the United States, and currently growing numbers in Brazil compared to any other, as they would call it, ethnic grouping. So we have to start looking at each of these things systematically. So that's what I'm saying. Within the institutions, that's where the crucial crux of things take place, because that's where racism becomes truly racism, because that's where it starts to create a disproportionate impact on individuals within certain subsets of ethnic groupings. Okay, so I go back to what I was talking about in terms of, I link that back to what I was talking about in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and the democratization of these funds to end white supremacy. It leads on to the notion that they're changing institutions because, as they would say, you got to be in it to impact on it or to change it. But the democratization of these funds aren't to create black politicians to go and create and have a vocal voice. The democratizations of these funds are backing who the, as the Americans would call it, the GOP, the GOP, the people that select those candidates that they want to represent them within each political affiliated party. It goes towards backing the democratic choices in the United States, in this case, Joe Biden. And from the Black Lives Matter movement already, Joe Biden received $120 million. Where's this money coming from? You have the Black Lives Matter movement has given the Joe Biden campaign $120 million through its arm that collects the charitable donations from people that want to donate to the cause. And not just people that want to donate to the cause. Think about it. Every football team in the United Kingdom has Black Lives Matter on the back of their shirts. That's a positive, right? Yes. In the greater scheme of things, it's a positive because it reflects an initiative to, and I don't want to sound cynical because it's not about cynicism. Everyone's jumping on this now because it's trendy and it's cool to make your company seem to be, yeah? As the producer would say, a multi-ethnic corporation, someone that's that's current, and you're moving with the trends of the times, and you don't want to be impacted by this tide that's flowing. You want to be a part of it. That's fine, because you would want people to be a part of positive change. You'd want people to be a part of positive growth. So through that success, you cannot then complain about it being successful in that sense. However, are these football teams paying the Black Lives Matter movement to use that logo, Black Lives Matter, because I'm sure that's a copywritten logo. So the Black Lives Matter logo, the Black Lives Matter movement, from our pain and suffering, could potentially be generating billions of dollars. I'm saying this because where else is the money coming from apart from donations, sponsorships, and people buying into the branding? So they're generating potentially billions of dollars that they're using for the democratization of funds to stop white supremacy by giving it to political affiliations. Key being one of the key ones being the Democratic Party, of which Joe Biden himself alone has received $120 million. Now think about this. And for those who didn't know, why would you give Joe Biden $120 million to stop white supremacy when Joe Biden himself, history has proved that he himself has supported racist within the institution. He himself has supported racist legislations that have caused the pain and the suffering of millions of black folks in the United States. Don't believe me? Check it out. You know, the prison system that, and I know I'm going to sound like a Trumpist that they're trying to change now. I'm not bigging up President Trump. He's got his own faults and he's got his positive likewise. But I'm saying within the institution, the legislations that monitor that, what's the word? I want to use the right word. That turns the black life into a currency in the United States once they go to prison. That's something that Joe Biden ties strongly to in the legislative process. And just because he's come back and said, "Oh, I'm sorry," is enough for the ruining of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of black lives? I'm sorry. Is that all it takes these days? I wonder how the Jewish fraternity would feel if Adolf Hitler turned around and said, "I'm sorry." Would they sit there and go, "Oh, okay"? Or are we so stupid that because someone says, "I'm sorry" for such a heinous crime, we're ready to start hugging them and say, "All right, yeah, he said he's sorry"? Anyone that thinks like that is an idiot. I have no qualms in saying that. Joe Biden has given the eulogy to several racist sponsors, three in the last 20 years, the eulogy at their funerals, including one member that belonged to the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK. Imagine giving a good stance to a KKK member, and then you want to come and say you're sorry. See, people, we need to understand that the pain and the strife and the difficulties that we are going through a positive organization, to a positive outcome of an organization that's pushing for change for us. And then we're taking that money and funding and making rich and making powerful the very people that were at the core and the root of our pain. How does that make sense? How does that make sense? How does that equate to justice and balancement and fairness? 0753-996-8143. I'll give it again, 0753-996-8143. I'd love to hear from you. 0753-996-8143. You know, it's not our problem, it's not our gripe per se, because we're not in the United States, right? We can look at it like that. We're not in the United States. Big up 971. No, for texting earlier. Yeah, we're not in the United States. It doesn't affect us, right? But yet, the pain and strife that we're going through here, the football teams, the sponsors, and all that what they're doing, where's that money going? That money is being bled outside the UK. Should we? Is it going to the is it going to charitable organizations here? Let me know if you belong to the Black Lives Matter movement and you want to speak to us black folks because you're always going on the LBCs and the BBCs and the Sky. Come talk to us, Talk to a little black station that deals with black people and explain a bit more. Correct us if we are wrong. I'd love to be corrected because, like I said, as conflicted as I am, the movement is creating a lot of positive changes. But the funding aspect of it, where the finances are, and I'm a money kind of person, you know. I deal with money. So when we're talking about money, and I'm seeing millions or hundreds of millions going where it shouldn't go, then I need to speak up. So all these little things are things that we need to start to look into. I was listening to a podcast recently, and the podcast is from a gentleman by the name of Pablo. I spoke about him last week. I'm bigging up his podcast. Hopefully, he's doing the same favor and bigging up the doctor's surgery. I don't know, but nonetheless, I'm going to big up his podcast. And Pablo from Hackney, he was picked out by LBC, and they created a podcast from one of his from something he called in and said. And Pablo did a recent podcast about the white gentleman that had been knocked over and picked up by the black guy that at the Black Lives Matter march that was attended by the far right racist groups. And he was saying that as humans, that was the right thing for the guy to do. Now, Pablo had asked for a critical review of the podcast, and I said to Pablo, Pablo, I love the podcast, and I understand what you're saying about the nature of stuff, but I do not agree that the black guy did the right thing. I saw that black guy as a sellout. I nearly called him a derogatory name. I saw him as someone that was trying to kiss bum to be in the forefront to say I'm doing the right thing. Someone that's being programmed to say no matter how someone steps on your neck, you know, it's still the same thing. How would someone know not to mess with you if every time they mess with you, you do nothing about it? If every time someone messes with you, there's no consequence, what would stop them from messing with you? There has to be a consequence. So if the guy picked him up and brought him around the corner and gave him a couple more licks and then sent him home, then I can agree with him, take him around the corner and say, see, I saved you, but here, hold this. And give him a few more licks, so much so that he never want to come out again out of his house, then great. But if that's not what he done, I can't agree with it. You have to allow people to suffer the consequences of their wrongdoings. Should I say that again? You have to allow people to suffer the consequences of their wrongdoing. Am I saying something that's wrong? You have to allow people to suffer the consequences of their wrongdoings. Otherwise, they will not learn not to do that again. That's my thinking. 0753-996-8143. Are you listening? 0753-996-8143. One last time for the money. 0753-996-8143. It's the doctor's surgery. We do each and every Tuesday, Britain's first Black Current Affairs show. We bring you the information that's current to the hand. Um, and for the first half an hour or so, I ramble, talk a lot, you know, but I'd love to get your views on what the subject matter is and whether my thinking is wrong, because I may be wrong. And I open to the thought and the process to say that I might be wrong. I'd love to hear from you, to have this discussion. You know, it's our current affairs show. It's our time to have dialogue. Let's have a discussion. But running on from that, you know, the when we look closer at home and institutions and the continuity of institutions, where do we draw the line in terms of right and wrong? You know, because we see that funding going towards the Democratic Party in the United States. I'd love to know if the money being raised in the UK is going towards black causes, and what that democratization of black causes would be in the UK, whether that would be supporting the Labour Party or the Conservatives or whatever that process is. I'd be keen to know, you know, where does that money go? Britain has a lot of established institutional negative practices. I've always, the first time there was a black poet, I don't know if you guys know his name, I can't remember his name. I think, yeah, a black poet from Birmingham in the 90s. I'll never forget the first black man that I heard of that turned down honors from the monarchy in this country. And when he turned on the honors, I was a youngster in those days in the 90s. When I heard he turned on the honors, it was like the biggest negative thing he could do, and everyone was saying, "Why would he do that? You know, he could have been rich. He's a fool. He's turned it down, and all these things." And at the time, I used to call myself a Rasta Christian. So at the time when he said that, and he, you know, that he wouldn't, I didn't think of it in the depth on the true grasp of why he did it. For me, it was just because Rasta said, "Born Babylon," and um, you know, that it was enough for me to say yeah. However, when you look at it in terms of its point by point basis, I have nothing but respect for that gentleman, and whatever his name is, wherever he is, I have nothing but respect for you for what you did then. And I knew that I would never be offered in life. I would never be offered a OBE, CBE, MBE, or none of them EE, because I never want none of them. And any black person, and I say this without any reservation, any black person that has accepted any of those things at any point in time, you're a sellout to your own. That's my thinking. I could be wrong. The point I'm making is that the establishment itself has to change. Not to change the establishment, but the imagery and the promotion of the racial prejudices in the society transcends generations. So if there's not a fundamental change now, whilst we're striking the hammer whilst it's hot, then when will there be that fundamental change? There's certain emblems that are given out to the public in these commemorations, these orders. You know, there's certain commemorations that are given out in these orders that are held at high regard. But yet, when you look at the imagery, there's one that I saw recently, and I had to research it. I saw it about 2 weeks ago, and I spent some time researching it because I didn't want to say anything negative about the monarchy without making sure that I was 100% right before saying it. And one of the things that I realized, is that it's a principle of good versus evil. And I'm not knocking the monarchy in that sense because I ain't here to fight and war the monarchy. But we have to change the negative imageries that breeds racism and institutionalized racist thinking. You have a white angel, which is meant to be the angel Michael, standing on the head of a black devil, Satan. Think about that. And it's an order, a order of excellence or recognition of excellence that's given to someone that was a commander in a high position or regard in the Commonwealth. So you can see and I'm not blaming the current monarchy because you have to tread carefully. These English people love their monarchy. I'm not blaming the current monarchy, but I have to look at the person that designed that was coming from an extremely racist and prejudiced view at the time of that design. And it is these are the things that people are scared to flag up, and say that these things can't be right. We have a couple callers. All right, caller wants to go live. 1 second, caller. Let me get this set up. Call you live. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, I'm Keith. I'm calling from Kingston.
Greetings, caller. Good to hear back from you.
Yeah, good morning, Doc. Yeah, Doc, the guy name is Zephaniah. I mean, this guy before, not guy, every guy, the brother, sorry, Zephaniah Benjamin. Yeah, the person you were just speaking about.
Zephaniah Benjamin.
That's his name, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, man. Did the right thing.
Yeah, so, yeah, you did the right thing. So, I called especially to speak about, we speak about the Black Lives Matter some time ago as well, about the agenda and all of that. We just go into details. But my calling in today is about the coronavirus scenario, pandemic situation. Now, why I'm calling to ask you about this is now the claim says that they coming up with a vaccination, and that they would like to vaccinate people who are vulnerable, like the frontline staff, people over 50, people that are vulnerable anyway. But the thing about them, when they talk about frontline, they never talk about the police. It's always about the nurses. So I'm a bit surprised at that as well. So what I'm saying is, why do they want to inject these classes that they're talking about rather than helping people with the underlying factors? Which is saying that all these other things that cause the underlying factors rather than injecting them or vaccinating them. I mean, if I don't have corona, why would you want to vaccinate me with corona in the first place? How could I help you? If I'm not sick, why would you try to get me cure or get me better? So, the next thing I'd like to say is that now you find that in England and America is where all these black people are not Italy and die. Yes. But now you find that they want to go and get their vaccination in Africa. Now I find out to me that this is targeted. Ever since this started, this pandemic started, it's an agenda, it's a targeted. And that why are they targeted targeting the indigo people in this way is because of the awakening. Now, there's too much people waking up. There's too much people leaving the church. The church was the biggest thing that keep us, I don't know, sheep lost, you know, and Matthew start, you know, from that now, it's gonna cause a situation, a rebellion or whatever. So I think this is where they come up with these plans now. It's a new plan, a new day, a new plan. You know, so anyway, yeah, I just give you that little piece and see if you can read something towards that. I'm not thinking you a bit off your course, but
yeah, no worries. I can. I'll run through. I'll run over it for you. You know. No worries. No worries. Yeah, big up Keith down there. Where the next caller?
Yeah, she gave a different name though. She said his name was Goff Jones.
Godfrey Jones.
Goff Jones.
Goff Jones.
Yeah.
Did you Google Goff Jones and Zephaniah?
Nothing's come up. Benjamin has.
Oh, Zephaniah Benjamin came up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Caller that called in and said Goff Jones. Who's Goff Jones? I'd love to know. Give us a call back if there's more than one. I know that there's been multiple people since I've turned it down, but I know that from in my sphere of thought, he was the first that I knew of to have done it in my, you know, but I know since I've heard of others. So I'd love to know it a little bit more. Based on what Keith was asking in terms of the pandemic and whether it be a pandemic or a pandemic and why they targeting the indigo or, for lack of a better word, black people. It's because we don't know, first and foremost, we don't know if it's a targeting. What we say, based on the evidence available, it strongly looks to be what it is.
That's okay, that's my fault.
Based on the evidential information. Because we know that that devil Bill Gates, I ain't gonna say it no different. You know what I mean? That devil Bill Gates had said that 250 million people die in Africa and blah 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 blah. Yeah, you know that he would love to do that. You know, and his prediction is something that it seems that every single politician is going by. You know, rather than go and medical professionals. No, they're their own medical professionals, but yet they're following someone that's not a medical professional himself. So you have to wonder. It gives credence for people to raise their eyebrows about what's taking place and how it's taking place. You know, because the sad part of the whole thing, which I said last week and I'm going to say again, there's no way of doing autopsies on a lot of these people to establish cause of death. And that's the sad thing. And as a black person, it makes me concerned that so much of my people have died and there's no way of establishing in proportionality of things, and there's no way of establishing what truly took place. You just have to go by that exercise. It was COVID-19. It was COVID-19. It makes you wonder because we know the institutions, we know what they're like, and the government themselves have come out and said it's due to factors linking to institutional racism. What factors? What aspect of institutional racism within the NHS? You know, and yet I see black people standing outside their doors clapping every day for the NHS when they used to clap for the NHS. You know what I mean? You wouldn't find me clapping for the NHS, to be quite frank. You know what I mean? I give thanks to the doctors that are truly helping people. That's all, as much as I will do. The doctors and nurses that are truly helping people, I give you thanks. Because we know that there's plenty of you out there that have sacrificed. You know, and we give and recognize all of you and give you thanks. But I cannot applaud an institution that I don't know how, if the institution has got some form of nefarious behavioral system inside of it that's causing a detrimental impact to my people. I cannot applaud it. I want it to be reviewed, but it is what it is. The death rate are what the death rate is. And I strongly think that if the death rate starts to increase in Africa, it's more linked to nothing more than our poisoning than anything else. Because at the moment, it was a global issue that didn't impact. What a lot of people would say, because we have to keep it balanced, right? A lot of people would say the reason why Africa isn't detrimentally impacted is because of the population density. So remember, in the UK, they're saying you should have a 2 meters distance. In Africa, you have far more less of a density, so that 2 meter space is a natural occurrence as opposed to a push for. In the UK, you have to push to get that 2 meters space, that social distance, as they would say, or the physical distance of 2 meters in between individuals. That's a space easily and far more achievable in African countries. And that's why the issue hasn't been as detrimental. Then, if that is the case, then why should we be expecting a spike? You see, you can't explain something that is not impacting in one sense, and then on the other hand, you try to switch it to say, "Oh, this is going to happen." But how is it going to happen if your explanation for why it's not happened as yet is the factor why it's not happened? Why is it then going to happen? See, all these things you have to start taking with a pinch of salt, because their very excuses sounds like rambling. And hence what we have to watch Africa, because if they attack Africa, they're attacking us. And it's as simple as that. We need to take it like that. So Augustine John is a Grenadian born and winning writer, education campaigner, consultant, lecturer, researcher who moved to the UK in 64. He has done notable work in the field of education, policy management, and international development. And he turned down one as well. Well done, Augustine. We don't take nothing. Anybody that's taken an MBE, OBE, CBE, whatever your EE you want to call it, you're a traitor and a sellout. Yeah, those are my opinion. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong and you think I'm wrong and you've got an OBE, MBE, and sellout EE, let me know and tell me how I'm wrong. 0753996843, 0753996843. The I got a caller.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize. Sorry, caller. Caller, you're live. What's your name? Where you calling from?
The Colombian professor, if you want to. But anyway, what I was trying to say is like, there's an agenda which Bill Gates has, which was to wipe out so many of the the African population.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And among them, not because of the fact that India, the color of the person or what, but in the fact that the minerals that Africa owns. That's why he wants to carry this vaccination to Africa and using the World Health Organization to do his bidding.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they want to put vaccine to the dispose of the SARS and all these different viruses. They want to wipe out the African nation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? I when I said black nation, we have black in our color. Black is absence of substance. Black is not us. We are full of melanin. We are not black. And we have to get that in our head and sometimes tell people that we are black. Yeah? We are Moors. We are Moors from the Moorish Empire. We don't want to call ourselves black. The black is the revolution to us.
Let me ask you something, caller, and I appreciate that. If we look at the African continent on a whole, right? We will say that the Moors can be linked. The term Moors can be linked back to Mauritania or Morocco, or even the Merowe of the Napta region in North Sudan, South Egypt, and the term Moor is renowned of people of a certain area. You have the term Blackamoor, and you have the term mulatto, which is a lighter Moor, but or more of someone that's mixed. Right. So when we when we look at how the term currencies came about, that was linked to the Moorish trading and the admiralty laws and so forth, and going back to that. But Nigerians, but when we look at when we look at areas like Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, the south, the further the central and further south, you won't find people that ever classified themselves as Moors. We no, yeah, but this the hold on. Yes, it's oh, no, you know, like how we were talking about. I was no, I was talking about earlier the Black Lives Matter movement, and I said there's positives and negatives to it. With the Moors, no, no, no. I understand. Caller, caller. We cannot speak at the same time. Afford me the respect, so I will allow you to speak again. That's why I didn't say I'll comment on air. I wanted you to hear what I had to say so that I can hear your rebuttal. Okay, so I will give you that time, but please, okay, afford me that time. There's positives and negatives when we say Black Lives Matter, and there's positives and negatives when we say more. If we look into the Moors in itself, the Moors, the reason why they succeeded in a sense was they actually sold and traded their own African brothers to the Persians at one time or another, and they were allowed to carry on with their practices and keep a lot of their African ancestry because they adapted Islam, and that's why they weren't overrun. And this is why if you go back and look into the Moorish principle, you will see a lot of positives and you will also see a lot of negatives. So there's pros and cons in everything. So for us to say we should abandon black and take Moors, some people could have the same argument to say, well, Moors has negative connotations. We should. I've heard people say we should abandon Moors and say Negro or Nagaru, and I've heard people jump around. So I understand and I appreciate that. But the reason why I use black is because I haven't got a problem with whatever we call ourselves once I know who I am as a person. And it's about that, it's about people recognizing who they are as a person and not looking at what people call them. So mhm. No, I'm saying that took place in Moorish history. That's what I was saying. That took place in Moorish history. Um, I I I understand. I follow. Okay, I follow where you're coming from, Cola. I do follow where you're coming from. I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is, it doesn't strengthen us from arguing with each other about terminologies and which terminology to go by, because that's that's too much toing and froing. You see what I'm saying? So what? Okay, you say black is devoid of color. I see black in terms of its etymology as the state of supreme balancement. Now that is Yes, but a dictionary, yeah, my turn. A dictionary only gives you definitions, and a definition. One of the definitions that Europeans have attributed to black is void of color. But in etymology and the root of where the word's coming from, black is a state of supreme balancement, and we were known as black people not because of the color of our skin, but because of our mentality being at a higher level, resonating in a state of supreme balancement. And that's why we were originally referred to as black people. People have then since interpreted it as the color of your skin. Now, I so I
According to the dictionary also, the first person to mention black, before we were called Negroes or whatnot, well, it was Elijah Muhammad from the Islamic community that brought that one into existence in our state. Yeah, it was Elijah Muhammad from the nation of Islam. Yeah? He was the one that brought that one into existence.
Elijah Muhammad was also I appreciate what you're saying. I'm just saying in terms of the historical usage of the term and references, black was a state of supreme balancement in ancient Egypt, and it was seen as such, and we were known as black people based on that. Some people would say we're Kemet, some people would say we're Hamitic, some people would say we're Moors, some people would there's a lot of terms out there that we all classify ourselves as. Now, if you are talking to someone that is self-aware and they're at a certain degree of their knowledge base, and you say to them more, they will say, yes, my brother, I understand where you're coming from. They understand the more science principles and the bay and the L's at the end of the names and the principles and the rules of law that were placed in Europe to protect Moors, and likewise rules of law that were placed in laws to protect Moors in the United States. So we all grasp that, but the youngsters, the youths, when you say more to them, you've lost them straight away. When you it's education, but it's education, but yeah, I have known the word more since I've been a child, right? And I've known the more science stuff since I've been a child. Yet the world doesn't refer to us as Moors, no matter how much we refer to ourselves as Moors. So for lack of a better word, I'm not here calling myself black. I'm saying for lack of a better word, we use those terms because we want to, the people that we want to hear, the youngsters, the people that we are reaching out to. Now, when they come into the fold and they ask more questions, then we can tell them more. We can tell them. So Kola, Moors used to be referred to as the dinge, right? That's a term that used to be called to Moors, right? Dinge, right? Now, is that a positive term or is that a negative term? Because we know that people use the word dinge in a negative sense, and we know that the word dinge came from a positive process.
What is a dinge? What is a dinge?
Go on.
If the Moors are the ones that educate Europe, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
came into Europe and educated them, put clothes on their back, treat them from being wearing wolfskin and put clothes, and even when they had all the disease with them, it was the Moors that cleaned them up.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to go with the positive, not the negative. The Moors were the ones that did all these things for the Western, educated, taught them about government and all the rest. What are we talking about? Positive, not negative.
So was that a good thing that they done?
I don't know.
Because you could say they gave away the family secrets, couldn't you? You could say they gave away the family secrets, couldn't you?
Okay, you could say that.
Now, I'm not knocking you. I'm not knocking you. I just want to have that dialogue where we look at things in a way where we don't have to, we find the positives in everything. Like I said, I don't agree with the term Black Lives Matter, but I can appreciate the positives that it's achieving. It's achieving a lot of positive changes at the moment. Whether those changes are long lived.
Because if the Westerners want to use the using negative words, that's what they use it. And they use it against you. I just said, I was the person that said to that one with the angel, with his the leg on the neck, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did not do that. Yeah? The
Mm-hmm.
point is, I'm saying, in return, these are the climbing the stairway to heaven, as they claim it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kicking the devils, the black devils off the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's things going on. And the negatives, they
Mm-hmm.
call it black devil, but the darker skin devil, they're kicking them, they're calling them devil and kicking them off the ladder. I think it's the mentality of the white people, or the Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to come away from that mentality.
That's right.
You know, but not them. Because if they want to deal with that, that's their problem. I agree with them, to tell them to take this thing and play it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he did it right. And that is the same symbol that we use as the show, the angel with his medal on the neck, which is going back to this guy, George, what's his name, Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? It's the same principle. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
We have to step away from black lives and use Moorish lives matter, African lives matter. Because even Africans, they were working as well. Because Julius Africanus was another part of as well.
Yeah, but there's a lot of research to show that Africa didn't come from that name. That the term Africa was used far before, because pardon me. No, that's one of the explanations of where the name Africa come from. But what I'm saying is that the term, it's been shown that the term Africa predates that name. It's older than but so there's so much into our story. Our story and our heritage is so rich that we should tell every aspect of it. We shouldn't just tell one dimension. It shouldn't just be about the Moors, because it wasn't just about the Moors. And likewise, the Moors had its positives, it also had its negatives. We should teach about those that came under the banner of Moors. We should teach about those that came under the banner in Nigeria, of whatever tribes and principles they went by. Likewise, South Africa and Shaka Zulu and all those people. Everything African should be taught to an African should know, or someone of African descent. Let me say it like that, rather than calling us an African. Let me say that someone of African descent, meaning they're from the continent. Their genealogy takes them back to the continental Africa in their morphogenetic gene pool. They should learn about everything African as well as global principles, so that they become a balanced person, not just about Moors.
We have to come to some kind of understanding, the Rasta will say, but over what we are about, who are we? Because we're kicking from prison to post and getting nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? We have to come to some kind of understanding. What are we doing?
Well, I would say we are getting somewhere, because there has been some changes over time. Not we can people give away their liberties, don't they? We don't really we haven't really, ever since slavery was abolished, we haven't really lost our liberties apart from us giving it away.
Slavery was not abolished. Slavery has never been abolished. They may have said it in writing, but it was never abolished because today we're still enslaved.
You mean if you mean metaphysically, but you are not a slave unless you make yourself a slave. Because I'm not a slave. I'm free as they come. No, I didn't say freedom, Mr. Me free as they come. No, you know what? I don't deal with the freedom part, but but it's good to hear from you, local. I do appreciate that, and this is why I allowed you to say what you have to say, because we have to be aware of every aspect of our story, the Moorish aspects included. The Moorish principles, the Moorish laws, and all these things. Mm-hmm.
So there's no way to come about.
Yeah, but
There's a treaty.
if you teach, if you teach, if you teach young black kids, if you teach young black kids about every aspect of their story, you are literally liberating the mind of you're unleashing a powerful mind on the world, and yet they do not want to do that. We want that. If but that's what I'm saying. If you want that, you have to create that. And this is if I don't know if this is the first show that you're listening, but I'd love for you to go back and listen to my older shows as well, because one of the things that we said, if we're going to do these things, we have to do it. You can. I cannot expect Boris Johnson to do what you're saying, to implement those changes that you are saying that we need to implement. That I agree that needs to be implemented. Why? Because he would never betray his own like that. Because he would literally, they would, right. So we need to create. So we need to create. Mhm. That's what I'm saying. We need to create this for ourselves. We cannot ask. If you ask someone for liberty and freedom, it means you can never get it. If you right, if you have to ask someone for something, it means that you will never have it. You know. So we have to think what we're saying and think what we're doing in every aspect of things. But likewise, we have to be the masters of our own destiny in the sense of teaching our own children. And we have to uplift our nation or a nation, a jewel in the crown, so that we can have that sense of pride as well. So, but give thanks, Cola. I appreciate that. Keep listening. You know, I'd love to hear from you again in the future. I appreciate the input that you've had. Likewise, thank you for calling. Oh. Big up the caller. I do appreciate that. The phone number, the text and call line is 0753 996 8143. 0753 996 8143. One more time for the record, 0753 996 8143. You know, there's we I cannot say that I'm right and I cannot say the caller is wrong, you know, or the caller is right and I'm wrong. You know, it's about dialogue and discussion and coming to a common consensus through dialogue. You know, you the listening audience, you should pick the best bits out of what's being said on both sides. And from picking the best bits of what's being said from both sides, you're able to expand your own way forward. And that's why we have these discussions. It creates guidance and thought. It provokes thought so that we can better mediate the path ahead. You know, we can better navigate the path ahead so that we can get to that destination that we want to get to. Because what we want and what we vision is what manifests. So we have to start getting the right visions out there. And once we get that right vision out there, we can achieve greatness in itself as a group, as a totality, as opposed to the individuals. Because we know that greatness in individual terms has been achieved and will continue to be achieved within our grouping and within our society. Those that don't know that there's greatness amongst us are the ones that have buried their heads and not paid attention. But we know that there will always be greatness amongst us, and there has always been greatness amongst us, and it will continue to be so. Okay? So it's about us achieving and linking in and growing, but we need that unity, and we need to get that. What's that thing off your shoulder? We need to get that monkey off the shoulder. You know, I know what I mean. When you shave a monkey, yeah. So we need to get that off our shoulder so that we can do what we need to do. Okay, and step up and step forward. So going back into what I was saying um, about these racist institutions, you know, we have to break them down and we have to highlight the factors around them. And if we're living in a balanced society, we have to present these issues because, like I said, they won't make those changes unless we keep highlighting them and then we don't partake in their societal structure without these changes. We push for these changes. But like I said earlier to the caller, I can't foresee the greater changes taking place. But what we can do, if they truly say they just want to get rid of racism, which we know racism is a policy, so we know they're not going to get rid of it, but we have to test them at it. And in testing them at it to see whether they will truly do it, we flag up these things. There's a honor called KCMG, right? It's an honor that's given out. And it's an honor that's given to diplomats and personnel from the overseas that I was talking about. And it will show you the archangel standing on the head of the devil. The archangel being white, the devil being black. You know, and this is something that's given out as a royal badge of honor in these honors. You know, and just you know, as Zephaniah had explained when back in the day, the term empire and what it stood for. You know, it's not a badge of pride for us. And I'm not saying that the British should get rid of the term empire and all these things, but they should get rid of the emblems if they're saying that they're now multicultural. They say it's multicultural Britain, or is that a failed project like what the media is now pushing to say multicultural Britain is a failed project? But if we're saying that we want to get rid of racism out of these institutions, the racist emblems also have to go. Because imagine that you do some work in the Commonwealth and someone gives you a badge that you're meant to pin on your clothes that shows a white dude standing on a black dude's head, especially in this time of day with George Floyd, who just received such a stomping. Think about it. You know, it doesn't sit well, it doesn't bode well, and it doesn't befit the modern monarchy, you know, because it is something that is extremely distasteful. Just like that statue they dash in the river. Dash it in the river, yes. Oxford is taking down the statue of, what's the guy in Oxford taking down Cecil Rhodes? They should have taken that down a long time. But this is what I'm saying. A lot of these institutions are moving in a very wagonistic way. And when you see institutions moving like this in a wagonistic way, you have to wonder what is up. So what's going to come next? When you listen what's coming next is as if they're saying, yeah, let's put black folks at the front of the queue for this vaccine because they need it, they're dying. So they're making the decisions for us as opposed to asking us. You see what I'm saying? Decisions being made for us as opposed to having that dialogue with us. And that dialogue with us is not being had because there's no central point or central focus or representative to have that dialogue. What we have is a general message that is resoundingly consistent in all the different Black Lives Matter groups, but yet we haven't got a voice. When I say a voice, I mean like we haven't got a figure like a Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. Say that slightly reluctantly because I didn't agree with the I Have a Dream speech. You know, we don't have that central figure that can, whether it's an elected official, because we don't want what's the word? We don't want a crown in it, an ordained monarchy to represent us, someone that just goes there and say, yeah. You know, we don't have that central figure. And I don't know what's going on with the Nation of Islam these days. They you know, with the minister Farrakhan, we'd love to know what's going on with him. If there's any nation listening, I'm not going to knock him, but what's going on? I'm surprised that, and that's the next point, you know, that I have to highlight in my ramblings. We are the only people You know what I'm saying? We're the only people I've seen on the planet, in my looking around, that our leaders are always religious men. Really, someone either a minister or a reverend, or it's never someone that's a scholar. We're the only people that always go to religious leaders. Anytime there's a speech or something being said in public and we're represented by officials, it's always a religious dude. Why is it never an academic or someone of stature that rose up and proved their abilities and their intellectual prowess? Why is it always someone that's coming to say God ordained them, or God this and God that? Why is it never someone that is more qualified for the position, as opposed to someone that is taking that position because they feel that they were ordained by God to do it? And when they come and they're doing it, they're not doing it in a balanced sense. All they do is talk about the Bible or the religious book or affiliation which they're coming from. You know, that's an explain to the question. But we need that central figure, that central point, that central axis. It'll be good to know that if that central axis is there, you know, and if it's an appointed position. Imagine that if all this Black Lives Matter movement money went to, that's in the UK, went to setting up an institution where someone was voted in that sat on that seat and represent of a committee that represented the voices from Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Manchester, London, and London would have all these different, and then that person would be that vocal point and point of view for us as a people, and everything is all systematic, and we can have that consensus where there's a strong point where we're not trying to seek what's the word, credibility or notoriety, which is just about having that balancement where they represent us and they're the voice of the people because they understand our voice, because we placed them there and we gave them the subject area, and we fund them through those means, so that no one can lobby them to sell out down the road, just like how Bill Gates lobbied the World Health Organization to sell out. No one can do all those things. It would be a beautiful thing to push for that positive change. Caller, you're live. Where you calling from? What's your name? Okay.
The government bought the slaves from the slave masters, and they are now in charge of the slave. We work for the government. WOG. Ask any white person, they will call you a work. Why? Because you are a worker of the government. You work for the government, you work for the government. We are still in slavery. Okay? I'm done. Yeah.
All right, caller. Well, so the caller says still not slavery, but I still stand by my position. I'm not, I can prove I'm not, but it's not for me to go. So the caller is saying that you all, not me, you all are workers of the government, and I can't disagree with him if him say that. Him say that. What is it? WOG, workers of the government, WOG. So I guess that's the term where gollywog comes from and all that stuff. If that's what you mean, caller. I don't know. And if you are a part of this governmental system and you are intrinsically in it, then I can understand. What he's saying in principle, but if that is this in his sense, but I'm a bit of an enigma in myself and my thinking, so I don't ascribe to anything that people try to put a banner on me with. And like I say, I think, therefore I am, and where I place my thoughts, that's where I am. For lack of a better word. And for the caller's benefit, I have gone through the Moorish Science schools. I don't use any of the titleage and any of those principles linked back to the Moorish schools. But I've gone through all the Moorish schools. I understand the Moorish schools. I follow where he's coming from. I understand the premise and the principles of sovereign and sovereignty. I don't come on here and teach those things because I think that those things are mouth to ear. If in the parts where are crucial and important, and the reason why those things are mouth to ear in the parts that are crucial and important is because as someone that's gone through the schools and have seen over the years what's happened is that where we have those portions of things that we can afford to implement, once we go blabbing about it, there's just a move to change the legislations. And a lot of people say, oh, you can't change these things if you're in a sovereign place and all this stuff. But they change it so that it makes it extremely harder and more difficult for you because you're out there blabbing it. So a lot of things are, and I'm not saying you do that, Paula. You've not done anything such, but I'm just saying you cannot teach certain things based on just a general premise. You cannot teach certain things out openly, just like in their society, they don't teach certain things out in the open. It's mouth to ear. And people have to learn that a lot of people do not deserve to be given some information, whether we want to say it in that way or not. I'm not trying to be condescending, but if we look at it in this sense, we can say there's a saying that goes that the Europeans, of 9 degrees, the Europeans receive 1 degree of information so that they could stop crawling. And look at the society that we are in. Look at the world. Look at the state the world is in. Look what they've done with the perversion of 1 degree of information. 1 degree of information, and look at the perversion of the world. So we have to be mindful what we give out there and who we give it to, and how they themselves will pass it on. You know, so I just say that to kind of, you know, highlight that understanding of where you're coming from in part of. So I'm not knocking you, Kola. I do know where you're coming from. But in terms of myself, I'm not saying that you were wrong. I'm just saying in terms of myself, I do not place myself in that bracket. Whatever people want to place themselves in and wherever people want to place themselves, credit and credibility to them. It's just that I don't. And no matter how they try to say, well, what about this? What about that? I do everything that I do voluntarily through my own means. I don't do it through coercion or compulsion. That's just me. And I know it's hard for you to know because you don't know me personally in that sense, but that's just me. So I understand and appreciate what you're saying. I do think people need to take the time out to look into all these things, to look at what the birth certificate means and why you have to register each child. And once you register a child, who owns the child? Because anything you register is owned by the organization you register it to. Just like a car, you know, you don't own your car, you're just a registered keeper. I understand all those things. And we can talk about all those things all day, but if you don't know how to implement them and make those changes, it makes no difference. And a lot of people go on about these things, and it's too much of a distraction in my part at the moment. I want to deal with current affairs at the moment, and that's what I'm looking into. So we'll catch you on the other side of the advert now.